Hi, everyone. Hopefully, you can see and hear us. We are extremely excited to be joined today by the one and only Kurt Marion of hashtag Camp 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 fame and everybody's favorite massage therapist. I'm going to let Chris tell you guys a little bit more about his secret inner life. But, Kurt, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So for those of you,
Oh, Chris, you froze.
Chris is frozen.
Oh, no.
Let's. No, there he is.
Right, you're back. You're back.
nice.
Start over.
I'll start over. I promise. I'll try to say words that don't freeze the computer this time.
Yeah.
So for those of you out there that have not had the privilege of getting worked on by Kurt, Kurt Marion has been a massage therapist for close to 2 decades, working on some of the most decorated endurance athletes in the world, along with athletes just like all the rest of us. But he's also been an elite athlete himself, racing in the domestic professional cycling scene throughout the 1990s. He was at the Olympic Training Center in that decade and then became a soigneur for World Tour teams such as T-Mobile in the early 2000s, working at the Tour de France, at Spring Classics, and many of the other big-time races here in the States and over in Europe. Today, he's one of the healthcare providers and massage therapists at Portland Athletic Center for Excellence, or PACE, which helps athletes of all levels deal with injury, stay healthy, and get back to doing what they love as soon as possible. He is also a collector of vintage typewriters and has, I believe, a Marshall stack of amplifiers on which he plays guitar quite loudly for all hours of the days at the moment, apparently. Kurt, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
I just want to say first, you make me sound so much better.
You're very interesting.
Yeah, I guess. I feel like, wow, I am really interesting. I also want to say too, I've been a little bit of experienced with some of this Zoom stuff, and I have to tell everyone, I am actually wearing pants.
What?
I just want to make that known. Yeah, there's been a lot of
there goes my $5.
Sorry. There's apparently there's been a lot of Zoom meetings where people are talking about their coworkers and whether they're wearing pants. I took a shower today. I put deodorant on.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I am also wearing pants, but they are pajamas.
So you're wearing pants now, but you told us before we went live that when you return to work, you are only planning on wearing an apron and a mask.
Yes. Yeah, only an apron and a mask. Yeah, I was telling these guys the state requirements are you either have to wear a smock or an apron, and I thought I'm not going to wear a smock. I feel like I was in 3rd grade, finger painting.
Eating paste.
Yeah, well, I do that anyway. So I have to come back to work wearing an apron. So.
Oh man.
Yeah, and a mask, of course. But,
no. So before we talk about massage therapy and cycling and everything like that, I think a lot of people would love to know what is it that interests you so much about typewriters, and why do you find them compelling?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm old enough. I just turned 49 a few weeks ago, so I'm old enough that when I left for college, I had a typewriter. I took a typewriter, and I ended up. I worked at a bike shop and a pizza shop in college, and I ended up, just talking with people I worked with, and they couldn't type papers fast enough, and we had a computer lab, but it had limited hours, and it was like the dot matrix printer and all that stuff, and it didn't work very well. So I started typing people's papers, and I would I was trying to think of how much I charge people, like $7 a page or something.
Whoa.
Nice.
Yeah, $5 a page maybe. I don't know. 7 seemed too much. I didn't make a lot of money, but I made good money out of it.
It's like $10,000 in
No,
2020
I
dollars.
wasn't. No, it was not that much. I wasn't that busy.
And adjusted for inflation, like
No,
that's
okay, maybe adjusted for inflation, yeah.
you know.
But so I always liked typewriters, and my wife Gretchen and I would see typewriters. If we went out to an antique store or something, and I always said I'm going to get a typewriter, and I just never did. And um, then finally, when we were back visiting my in-laws in Kansas, I found two typewriters and brought them back on the plane, and that was 2.5 years ago or something. And so then I'm like, well, what do you do with typewriters? And I thought, well, I'll type letters to people. So I started typing letters. Like both of my grandmas were still alive at that time, and aunts and uncles and stuff. And now, I type 20 or 25 letters a week, and I've got 20 typewriters, and I just learned because I like working on bikes and working on guitars and amps and stuff. I
Fiddling.
just learned. I'm a busybody. I like to do projects, so I just learned how to clean them up, and I can do a lot of stuff on them and fix them. So
Very cool.
yeah.
So you've sent 20 to 25 letters like a week for 2.5 years. Is that right? Have you gotten any? Have you gotten any like really remarkable replies?
Oh, good. Yeah, it's funny. In November of last year, a friend of mine, a, a client came to work and said, "Hey, did you hear about this woman, or did you hear about this guy from Wisconsin who's dying of cancer and he wants Christmas cards?" And she said, "I thought of you when I heard this story." No, and she said, "Okay, well, I heard this story on like CNN or something." And so I looked it up, and sure enough, there's a guy. I'm from Wisconsin. This guy's from kind of central Wisconsin, and he was dying of like pancreatic cancer, I think, and he had just months to live. He was 72, and he wanted Christmas cards. And so his family like put it out on Facebook or something. Well, it got all over the world, and I thought, well, I'm not gonna send him a Christmas card. I'll start sending him letters. So God, every 5 or 6, 7 days, I sit down and bang him out a letter. And I thought, oh, I could be like, "I'm really sorry you have cancer," or I could just be like, he knows he's dying of cancer. I know he's dying of cancer, so I could just say, "This is who I am. This is what I'm doing. I ride my bike to work every day. This is the things I see." So that's what I did. So I sent him probably 10 or 10, 8, 10, 12 letters, something like that. And then I sent him a letter the end of January. And it's funny because it went out, and I thought, I should look and see if he's still alive. And he had just died the day before. So he had gotten 1.5 million letters or Christmas cards.
Wow.
So in the middle of February, I get this letter back from his wife. Well, I didn't know it was from his wife, but I get this letter back with his return address on it. And I thought, oh, they must be answering email or answering mail. So it was from his wife, and she said, "Hey, I just want you to know, around the house, you're known as the typewriter guy." And she said, "We just thought it was really funny that you just kept writing letters." And she said, when your letters would come, we would pull them out of the mail, because we'd flip through the mail, and there were so many cards. And so she said, we just thought it was great that you just wrote letters instead of sending a card, because she said we got a lot of like, cancer sucks and stuff like that. And she said, we just thought we'd love to hear about your day-to-day life. So now I'm pen pals with his wife.
Oh my God.
So I just turned around and was like, well, now you're my pen pal now. So
that's amazing.
So, and I've got a couple letters from my aunts and uncles and stuff, and yeah, it's fun, it's geeky, and not, I don't know.
That's great.
Time. Yeah.
So, with how cool and interesting you are, how did you end up in the world of endurance sports, Kurt?
Yeah. Okay. So
I
in
love, I
high
love,
school,
I love how you just like insulted our entire like watching audience, and
I
like
picked up on that. I
yeah,
picked up on that a little bit.
that was great. That was solid. It was good.
I think she's trying to stroke my ego and make me seem like the typewriters make me really cool.
That's
So
right. That's
yeah,
right.
it's not working. Um, yeah. So in high school, I was kind of a mix of um, uh, a jock and a dirtball, and I ran. I know it's hard to believe that I ran in high
Oh no,
school. I
Yeah,
ran
no,
I
I know,
can't
cross
believe
country and
that.
I know you
track.
run.
I can't believe that.
I know who you run.
No.
I
A
didn't
swimmer.
enjoy it, but I did it. It was fun. It was fine, and then when I graduated high school, I thought, well, I'm not gonna exercise anymore. And about a year after I graduated high school, I ran into my cross country coach, I guess it was, at filling up at the stop and go or whatever. And I was smoking a lot, and I had super long heavy metal hair, and he just was like, yeah, looking looking like I thought you would, or so. I can't remember what he said, but I thought, oh man, all right, I gotta pick it up. And I came from a BMX background, and I rode BMX freestyle and ramps and stuff, and so I thought, well, I could start running, and I thought, nah, I don't want to run, and I thought, well, I'll get a bike, and that's how I'll exercise. So I went down to the next town and bought a $298 Trek steel,
It's
bottom of the line,
like a ten thousand
and
dollar bike these days.
yeah, I know. Wow, that's true too. Yeah. It was, it was heavy. I didn't know anything about racing, and I started riding it, and I thought, oh man, this is it. And I was just all the way into riding right then. I mean, that was
Awesome.
it. Upgraded the bike, and then I ended up, when I started at college, I started at junior college in southern Wisconsin, and so we didn't have dorms or anything. So I would go to school in the morning and take my bike, and if I had a couple hours, I'd get out and ride. And a guy parked next to me and was like, "Oh, are you a rider?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, we have this group ride we do." And so that was it. Went to the group ride, and then everybody's like, "Yeah, we're going to this race this weekend." And I was like, "Okay." Here's
Me
my
too.
$20. I don't know what I'm doing. They're like, okay, you just ride 30 miles and come back and sprint. Okay. But yeah, I was so hooked. I was, yeah, like all the guys, I mean, it was full on, became everything I did at all times. So
What about cycling in particular, like, or if you can remember like that first race, like what was it about the sport where you were like, oh, I want to do that again?
um, I liked the mileage. I liked getting out and riding for three or I didn't know what I was doing. Bicycling magazine had, train for your first century, and you know what I mean? So it was like there was no intervals. It was all just hours and hours of riding, and I don't know, that it just totally appealed to me. Um, and the racing, I just think it was, well, I liked the winning. I liked winning. It was fun.
How did you discover that you were a good sprinter? Because that's something that figuring out what your strengths are in cycling sometimes takes a little while. Do
Yeah.
you remember the first time when you were like, oh, I'm better at this than other people, or I'm better at sprinting than I am at climbing or time
I mean,
trialing or
um, yeah. Well, so that was 91. I started riding in like June of 91, and that was the first year that ESPN carried the Tour de France. And they did like 30 minutes every day, which was, 22 minutes of coverage or whatever. And I thought, oh, I'm a climber. I want to be a climber. I want to be a climber. Well, in Wisconsin, everything's all like 400-meter climbs, 230-meter climbs. I mean, and so I was a climber, but I didn't know it. I was just a punchy climber, who could just get up those little things. And once I started on the group ride, the group I was with was out of a little town called Janesville, Wisconsin, and there was probably, on a big day, there'd be 25 or 30 guys, no women, and there would be, on a cold day or rainy day, there'd probably be 12 of us. And it was 40 miles, so it was 20 miles up, and then you turn around and come back the same road, and there was 12 sprints. And so, the first, yeah. Now I'm like, holy shit, what? Yeah. So you'd sprint for points. You get three. Yeah. It was 3-2-1 for first, second, and third. And so it was kind of a gentleman's agreement, like, don't be squirrely, keep track of your points, and then you could kind of say you won that week. So the first couple weeks I rode, the guys, and I have to say too, like, having been on just thousands of group rides, the group I happened to fall in with were really helpful. Like, they were really cool. I was a total noob, wearing underwear under my chamois and, all the things you do that they're like, don't do that. Okay. Wearing long socks. Yeah, don't do that. Okay. So, but, when they were like, okay, if you feel like you can sprint on some of these, we'll tell you when they're coming up. So they'd say, okay, we're half mile to the sprint. And it's like, okay. So the first two, you kind of screw up, and by the third one, I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. So I guess that's my answer, is I would just all of a sudden was like, oh, I'm faster than all but one of these guys on the ride every single time. And then it was just learning how to do it, learning what my limits were, and I wasn't nervous about riding crits because I was a BMXer, so.
Comes in handy. You're right.
So give us a quick overview of what happened next. Like, sort of fill out the rest of give us the short history of, like, so you discover it, and then connect the dots between there and the Olympic Training Center.
So I mean, I started out, I don't even know anymore if they still have a Cat 5. You had to start out as a Cat 5. And then for people who've never done road racing, you have to accumulate points for placing, and then you move up categories, and it gets harder and harder, of course. So I mean, right away, the USCF, the Federation District Rep, was like, well, we got to make you a 4 because you've won like 7 or 8 races. And so it was like, okay. And by then a team in Madison had approached me and said, hey, you could ride for our team. And I think they gave us, 1 jersey and 1 water bottle or whatever it was. So it was like, okay, that's like pro time, man. So, and then, it just kept moving up, and at some point, a couple years later, I was at a race in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and again, you had a district rep for, I think, like, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Indiana, or something was our district rep, and he said, hey, the training center is having a camp this summer. We want you to go to it. And okay, so it's a talent ID camp thing, and so it was just one of those things where they said, well, you're kind of a second or third tier athlete. The first tier athletes get to live at the training center and stuff, so you can get support, but you can't live there. You're not that good. And so, I was out of college. I guess it was right before I graduated college, but I didn't have a girlfriend or anything, and I was like, well, I might as well move to Colorado Springs, and then so that by then I was trying to turn. I mean, I was trying to turn pro. I was a category 1, and I was good, but just not that next level.
And just to contextualize it, just so people can get it, like who were some of the other riders that were there during while your time was there?
Uh, Jeff Evanshine, Bobby Julich, um,
Bobby Julich, later third place in the
Lance.
Tour de France.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
got third. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Lance was there, but not. He wasn't living there. He was already top level. Christian Vandeveld for sure. I mean, I rode with him so many times. Can't even count. Oh gosh. Yeah. Tyler Hamilton. I mean, anybody that was big, in those years with Postal, for sure I was around.
Awesome.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So the group rides were quite something.
So tell us about something that you developed through cycling that's been applied to the rest of your life. Like what's something that you gained through your cycling career that still serves you?
Just work ethic. I mean, training. I don't mind hard work. Mm-hmm. I mean, for those of you watching, at camp, I goof off. I joke a lot about being
a ton of work,
lazy, and I don't want to work. But I mean, if you get into these sports, it's work.
It's a lot of work.
So that I think, and tenacity. I mean, you can use all those adjectives, but for sure, mm-hmm. all that stuff. But so work ethic for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So then tell us about how you moved from focusing on cycling to becoming a massage therapist. How did that happen?
Yeah. Well, I think at some point you face up to the fact that you're not going to make that transition to pro. And, looking back on it now, it wasn't difficult. Like I guess if I had been talking to myself back then, I would have thought, oh my God, it's going to be heartbreaking. I'm just going to be a wreck. And it was just like, okay. And so stopping riding was not hard. I was pretty burned out, and I had met my wife already, and we got married, and then it was like, okay, now I've got to get a real job, and but I thought, I've worked in bike shops and I've done some other stuff. What do I want to do? And it was her idea. She was like, well, why don't you go to massage school? You can stay in the industry. You can work with athletes. You can work with cyclists. You can work with all of your friends. But you can make a business out of it. And I was like, okay. And so, it just happened. It just happened really well because the Colorado Springs, we were living in Colorado Springs still at that point. The Independent, which is their local, like Willamette Week independent newspaper. I'm not kidding. Page 22, where I'm flipping through it, and it says Colorado Institute of Massage Therapy, and it says open house. And it was like 2 nights later or whatever. So we go there, and I talk to the guy, and I wasn't totally sure about it. I mean, it wasn't, I'm not going to sit there and go, oh, the heavens spoke to me. And I didn't, even during school, I was just like, maybe I'll use this, maybe I won't. I'm not sure. Well, and let me back up a sec. Sorry. Once you're in it's like Heather Jackson or any of these other people. Once you know one person, you know everybody. So I knew every pro 2 times removed, even if I didn't know them personally. And so when you live in a bubble, especially like Colorado Springs, where there's a huge pool of elite cyclists, and Hunter Kemper was there too. I think when they added Olympic triathlon to the Olympics. But once you have that pool, people were calling and like, hey, can you work on me? Sure, yeah. And then all of a sudden, one of the athletes I was working on was a pro mountain biker, and she said, "Hey, my team's looking for a soigneur to travel with us this summer." And I was like, "Sure, okay." And I knew her coach, and I knew he was running the team, and it was just super easy to slot right into that. I mean, and here I am 21 years later. I mean, it's I just never got out of it. You know what I mean?
Still doing it.
I just never left.
I just never left. And I mean, obviously, again, I goof off a lot, but I mean, I enjoy what I do. I take it super seriously, even though I don't act like I take it seriously. I take it super seriously, but I have a super fun time at it, and that's how I was when I raced. I mean, I took it really seriously, but I had a lot of fun doing it.
So that's a good transition into our next question, which is, what is a soigneur?
So that it's a French word, and it doesn't have a direct American word for it. It always has meant to care for or to care with, which we don't use that verbiage in English, but it's a soigneur has never. It's a word that came about with the cycling world, so it's not a word that was in use before, and going back to the first years of kind of organized sports, boxing, but cycling more, were the only sports that really used massage. So massage was hand in hand with teams pretty much from, well, I mean, I guess when the tour got organized into the fashion it is today in about the 30s, 1925 or so, when they went to a team concept, that's when soigneurs started. So it means to care for. So that means everything from carrying bags for riders to prepping food, dealing with hotels, anything that the rider doesn't need to be doing, which can be anything. I mean, everything.
Managing feelings.
Yeah, there's some of that too.
So how did you get from that first soigneur job for a domestic like cycling team? How did you get from there to being a soigneur in Europe?
Again, it's a small world. Some people that are watching may remember in 2001, which is when I worked for GT. They had been bought by Schwinn in 1997, 1998 or something, and they were going bankrupt. So partway through the season, I showed up to a race somewhere, I don't remember what, and the team director said, so you're free to talk to other teams because we're not going to have a team next year. We're going bankrupt, but you can't talk about it. So I thought, oh, okay. And the mountain bike scene was great. I mean, the mountain bike scene is super easy. I would fly into a race Wednesday morning and fly home Monday morning. You don't have to, you're not moving hotels every night. It's not, it's not the pressure cooker of the road scene. The races are shorter, the days are shorter. So it's much easier. You don't have to you don't have the cars following. So I thought, well, I'll go talk to all the mountain bike teams. And at that time, it was like Trek had a pro team, Schwinn had a pro team, Giant had a small team, Answer, they made Forks. I don't even know if they are still around. But I talked to everybody, and everybody's like, yeah, we don't really have the budget next year. So I thought, okay. And I just thought, well, I'll go back. Gretchen and I had moved up here to Portland by then, and I thought, well, I'll just go back to Portland and start working. And so I was doing some massage out of my house here, and the phone rang, and they were like, hey, I don't know you, but I got your name from Dean Golich, who's running the team, and are you looking for a team next year? And I said, yeah, sure. And it was like, well, we'd need you in Europe. And I was like, oh, okay. And at first it was only supposed to be like 50 days on the road. And it was like, I don't know, 120 or 130 or something. It was a lot.
Oh, wow.
Was that all at one stretch, or were you going back and
home.
forth?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I would be gone for about 3 weeks, and then I'd fly home for 4 days or something. I'd get home Monday afternoon and leave like Friday morning. Or Saturday morning. It was funny.
Oh my God.
And when you're working in that capacity, so you're fixing the bikes, you're doing this. No. So you weren't doing no bike.
No, we had all mechanics. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
my responsibilities were clean out the cars. So let's say the race is over, either it's a stage race or it's a one-day race. I would clean out the cars, not the mechanic stuff, not the wheels, not his tools, but just garbage. You know, they're eating all day and throwing stuff. The coolers were my responsibility. So, you know, you'd have a small staff cooler that would have drinks in it, and then you'd have the rider cooler, which would have all the bottles and stuff. So that was my. Yeah, but no, I didn't have to deal with any of the bike stuff. Once in a while, the mechanics would say, "Can you help us wheel the bikes down here or something?" Yeah, sure. And then one time we had a mechanic that was sick, and they were like changing cassettes for the TT bikes, and they knew that I'd been a mechanic in a shop, and they were like, hey, "Can you help us?" Absolutely. You know, you never say no, because those guys will help you in a pinch too. Mm-hmm. So that kind of stuff.
So what's something you learned during that part of your life that you hang on to?
Well, you know, I really honed my skills on working with athletes, like mentally and emotionally. I mean, you know, you don't learn that stuff when it's just you, but you know, being on the road and learning people, getting to know people so well, you know, knowing when they're struggling, when they're not saying they're struggling, you know, because at breakfast, everybody's like, yeah, I feel good. And you'd be like,
no, you don't.
No, that's not happening today. You know, so that, you know, and again, my degree in college is psychology, so I liked the games. I liked the mental games, and I like, you know, messing with the riders, because you can make them think they're going to have a better day than they probably were gonna anyway, just by saying, your legs felt good yesterday on the table. You know, you felt and there you're.
Real strong.
But you never say, oh man, you feel bad.
You're garbage.
Your legs are garbage. You're screwed.
That's hilarious.
It's fun stuff.
So like, I think in, you know, massage in like the endurance world, there's definitely, you know, there's like a slice of the endurance world that's like, yes, like I do this, it works for me. What's the elevator pitch for somebody who doesn't necessarily get worked on or doesn't quite know what the benefits of like regular massage therapy are?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because a lot of people don't. I had, you know, 2 massages ever until I started living in Colorado Springs and was racing better. And honestly, you know, I would debate this with anybody, but if you're talking about a hierarchy of need of massage for athletes, cyclists are at the bottom. I mean, you know, because it's a sport where you're under muscular load, but you're not under joint load. You know, certainly does it feel good? Absolutely. I mean, when I started getting, you know, my quads and IT bands and glutes worked on all the time, it was great. But I think for most people who are kind of more cyclists, they probably can skip it, and they don't, you know, you don't know what you need until you need it. And then you look back and go, oh man, I needed that for years, you know? for runners, I mean, again, once I hung my shingle out and came back to Portland and started working out of pace, I mean, I went from, no clients to 97% runners. You know what I mean? Like, because that's the people that needed it. And I never worked on runners. Like, shit, what do I do? It's like, well, it's just an athletic body, so, so what do I say? I mean, so that's a long answer to your question. What do I say? When you need it, you need it, and you'll feel better after, and you'll go, okay, now I know what I can use this for. But until you really go and do it, it's like, and that's not to say every time somebody gets off my table, they're like, oh man, I feel so much better. Because I've worked on a lot of athletes where it's like, we're just dealing with this XYZ on you that we're just not getting anywhere, or we're just barely keeping your head above water. And it's like, so sometimes you don't walk out of there and have an epiphany, but most of the time you're going to feel better.
So I don't know if it's because of that, but I think there is like a pervasive perception that the more painful a massage is, the better it is for you. Can you talk a little bit about the reality of what is there?
Yeah. So some of you have probably asked me this on the table. Okay. So that's pretty much false. No pain, no gain. It's pretty much false.
Good.
And there's two things that govern that. Number one is the brain and the nervous system. So, if I just walk up to Chris right now and I punch him in the shoulder, there's a lot of body movement protection and a lot of stress that is released in that instant. That's never beneficial. Now, again, if I just punch him in the shoulder and it's 2 seconds and then we're hugging because I haven't seen him in a while because we're social distancing, maybe he's so happy to see me that he already forgets about that. But for that instant, there's a lot of activity that happens around that. Now, the second thing is there's physiologic laws that govern the body. There's a bunch of them, but the one that I've always thought about or think about is called the Arno-Schultz law. It's named after two German scientists. And I think they discovered this in the late 1800s when they were doing cadaver studies, and they used like a shocker. So what it says is weak stimuli tends to produce a response. Strong stimuli tends to inhibit a response. So if we're trying to get a muscular release, or we're trying to get a muscle to sort of, release itself and get some other things moved around, then we don't want to overload the system. Because again, if the nervous system is having all these strong inputs, the last thing it's going to do is let go. That's probably the number one question in my whole career is, I used to go see this woman who that's made me, sweat on the table. And I always felt better afterwards. I'm like, of fucking course you did. If I give you a snake bite on your arm, it feels better when I stop because I stopped. So there's very few studies that have shown a benefit to super aggressive, deep stuff. Now, there's always a but. I never say never, and I never say always. If you're 30 seconds from lining up for the 400 meter or the 100 meter finals at the Olympic trials, and you have a cramp in your hamstring, we're going to town. We're going to go as hard as we can to overload the system and try to get it to shut down. So, again, there's always a little asterisk, but yeah, no pain, no gain. It just doesn't. It's the same thing with coaching. It's the same thing with like going hard every day. I mean, the first year that I rode, I didn't take any recovery. Nobody used the word recovery until 1996. There was no recovery. There's no recovery drinks. There was no rest. Now was the rest days okay? Yeah, but I mean, nobody talked about it. I mean, Jesus, I rode probably 175 days and 180 days. And I wouldn't perform at races or something. I was like, God, I just don't understand. I'm training like Lance Armstrong. I mean, I'm riding 10,000 miles a year.
My God.
Yeah, there's Molly and I were kicking around an article just last week that was about recovery and talking about how it's more of like nervous system signaling than it really is about like. Yeah, the whole thing was about like, well, is it active versus passive recovery? And what they found was like, yes, active recovery is better, but because it's more nervous system, less like muscular, like a lot of the things. And we were like, oh, whoa, like, yeah, it's nice to be like, okay, good. Yes, active recovery is better. But I think, not the reason that we were expecting.
Yeah, I would have thought like flushing your muscles, all that kind of like getting them working, all that kind of stuff. But apparently just brain-body connection is always really important.
Well, again, those sensory inputs, I mean, you're still, you need to baseline that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I'm more in recovery mode now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you've earned it after 175 out of 180 days of riding.
That's what I tell myself. I'm not really sure that that's true, Molly.
I think that sounds right. That's right.
You kind of answered this already, but like, how would an athlete tell when they need some soft tissue work? Like, what are some flashing lights?
Well, I think a succession of hard workouts that you are not feeling recovered from. So if you do, 2 or 3 hard sessions in a week or 10 days, and then, you kind of come to that 10th day and you're like, okay, I've had a couple of easy days. I'm not feeling like I'm coming out of this. Or that last hard block before you start your taper. I mean, those are ideal times to come in and get work because you've already buried yourself in the hole and now you're trying to kind of come out of that. A chronic, an acute pain, irritation, soreness, whatever verbiage you want to use, that is just not clearing up. Like if you're running and you're like, this heel's been bugging me off and on, and then it becomes, this heel's really bugging me. Starting to miss days of training or starting to miss. Well, I can't do the 400 repeats because that's too fast. That's too much on that heel. Those are red lights. I mean, those are yellow and red lights that you're like, okay, I should. And again, massage is only one thing. I mean, PT, acupuncture. I mean, I use the word massage. I just use it for anything. I mean, you should go get those kinds of things looked at. But massage fits in really well to that sort of recovery. Trying to. Again, the idea is trying to separate all the muscles out so everything can kind of flow again.
What can you feel as a massage therapist? Like what are the qualities of soft tissue that you can tell from giving somebody a massage? Like if you know that somebody's body is garbage.
That's $1 million question. That's $1 million question because it you'll hear a lot of esoteric answers. Like, well, the energy of the body,
angry.
But I feel like I've done this for 21 years now. I can't tell you. I just know it. I just know it. When I'm working down like the IT band and the quad, I'm always watching someone's face because sometimes people won't see anything, but they'll grimace a little bit, and then I back up. What am I feeling? Oh yeah, look, there's a what will you feel? If you can imagine a balloon, so an inflated balloon, so you run your hand over it, it's pretty smooth. But when you let the air out, especially if it's a balloon that's been blown up for a while, it's pretty stretched out. It kind of has a fibrous sometimes feeling to it. I mean, that's what I'm looking for is smooth fibers. And you'll come to those places where it feels kind of puckered. Um, fibrotic is the word that we use,
Hmm.
but so you're looking for that. I'm also looking for, again, some of you who are out there listening may have had me say this to them on the table. Spongy. I want a muscle to feel like a nice, firm sponge,
Huh.
like a sponge that's wet. A dry sponge, it doesn't have much give. And if I feel that, it's just the quality of the muscle.
Hmm.
So you want to feel a nice squishiness. I mean, sometimes people are so fatigued that it just feels so blah. And that's an esoteric word
No, I get
that I use,
it.
but
We just got a comment
but
that said, "So bubble wrap is
lifeless.
bad."
Yeah, but lifeless. It's always
Huh.
like that. It's like that idea of when you're cooking spaghetti, you fling it at the wall, and if it sticks, it's like, oh, it's perfect. But if it that's where you want that tissue feel
Yeah.
like that versus like kind of rubbery, overcooked.
Yeah, I
Or
was thinking
undercooked
of
for sure.
chefs knowing like how far a steak is done by like by feel.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
So it's
interesting.
kind of like it's hard to tell. It's hard to say just because I
You do
don't
it all the
talk about it
time.
anymore. I just know,
Yeah.
what I mean, I just
Right.
know it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like anything that somebody's done for a long time. Like when you're playing the guitar, you're no longer like consciously like I'm going to play like the sixth note of the diatonic scale. Like it's just
Right.
you're just playing
There's
at that
You
point.
just
mastery.
do it. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, why'd you play that note? And you're like, I I just knew it. Or that note was really great. And you're like, yeah. And then
Thank
why'd you
you.
play it? I don't because I just knew it needed to be there. You know what I mean? It's like I don't. There's no reason. It just was there. I just knew it needed to be there.
So like everybody's practice over the years for whatever they're doing, changes and evolves. What are a few of the like big like intersections or turning points or things that you can remember that you've altered your practice over in the 21 years you've been doing?
Well, 7 or 8 years ago, I'd have to look back in my notes. Crashed my bike and I broke my hand, and I had to have 3 pins put in my hand right here, and I was in a big, cast for 3 months, and um, I really was enjoying what I was doing at that point, but when I went in to meet with the surgeon, she was honest. She was like, it's a common fracture. I had this fracture called the Bennett's fracture. She said it's real common. I've done the surgery 78 times or 75 times, but she said I've never done it on someone who actually uses their hands a lot. So she's
Hmm.
like, I don't know if you'll ever be able to work again. And so um, that when I came back from that, and again, I was working at pace, so I was able to like really be adamant about doing my physical therapy.
Mhm.
I really limited my hours, much like training. I mean, when I got the cast off, I took a week and I just played guitar, like fingerstyle guitar, strengthened my
Hmm.
hand, and then when I went back to work, I did one massage on Monday, two massages on Tuesday, one massage on Wednesday. I just really, really, really ramped up slow, um, because I really wanted to come back. And after that, like 6 months after that, I was like, okay, I really like this.
Hmm.
I really want to do this. Um, and then in 2008, when the financial crisis happened, I was reading online some of my professional journals and even some people that I knew in town. I had a little online group that we would have an online chat, um, and they had lost 30-40% of their clientele, and I was up 25% that year.
Wow.
And it was sort of like, okay, it was validation, like, okay, I'm doing something right. And it sort of is like, I've had people say, what's the secret to your success? And I'm like, I don't know.
Very
I don't really
good.
know what I do. I just make it up. Yeah, it's like I
Right.
just make it up. but so I didn't have to adjust anything, but it was just like validation of like, okay, whatever I'm doing, I'm doing well, and I'm I'm doing right, and it was just good validation. But I haven't really changed. I haven't really changed much. I haven't had anything I've really felt like changed any of my philosophy over the years.
Just
That's really cool.
honing it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been lucky. I mean, I'm totally, again, I don't have any idea what I'm doing, but somehow the pasta has stuck to the wall.
So we have some great questions in chat. If anybody else has questions, feel free to put them in. We also have a hello from someone who I have not seen in chat before, named Chef Salty McWelldone, who is certainly the athlete's table.
I have to say, that jerk today, I don't know if you guys saw what he posted. He posted some pictures from camp last year when he made ribs. So I was like on Instagram this morning or something. I was like, oh what? Man, what a chump.
I love ribs. Man. So we have a lot of folks here who you've worked with, not surprisingly. And we have a very important question from Amy VT, who also wants to know where her letter is. She says she is not joking, and many people would like to know the answer to this question. It's very important.
Okay.
Do most of your clients wear underwear, and are you supposed to?
Good question. Well, and I always feel, if you're a new person coming to see me, I'm pretty upfront about that. I have no problem talking about nakedness and whatever. No, I would say, well, okay, first of all, let me back up. I don't look under the sheet. So I was going to say, I would guess that, no, I don't know. I would say almost everyone leaves underwear on. I don't know the protocol. Yeah, the protocol when I was in school was, you disrobe. I don't know. I always took my clothes off. I don't know.
Kurt's now.
I have a woman who comes to Pace that I trade with. She's another massage therapist that I met at a class. And I undress, and she leaves her underwear on. So yeah, there you go.
So it doesn't.
There's no right
no
or
one
wrong.
knows.
There's no right or wrong.
There's no rules.
I have a woman right now who told me right away that she did not feel safe, but loves massage, so she has left her clothes on. So she always leaves her clothes on. But I said, okay, but you can't wear jeans. You have to wear like soft pants or something. So she comes in like a pair of tights or something. So that's fine.
Yeah.
I just won't work through jeans.
I mean,
no jeans. It's hard on my hands. My hands are like, they're buttery soft, man.
Right?
I'm definitely going to. I'm going to permanently adopt the term soft pants. It's all soft pants from here on out.
It's been soft pants in my life for a long time.
Yeah. Well, you even said you're wearing them right now. You've got the pajama bottoms on. So
business yoga.
Okay.
We have a couple other ones. Cher would like to know how many massages you can give in a day, and who gives you a massage. So you just said you trade.
So a friend of mine. Yeah. So I've met people through the years, and we've traded. So how many? So the most I've ever done in one day is 10 1-hour massages. That was last July. Yeah. So I can't sustainably do that. Meaning I can't do.
That's insane.
That day's back to back. Yeah.
Except it can't.
Except I can't.
Sorry,
but that's not hands-on hours. I mean, I'm washing dishes and doing other stuff, so that's not just massage hours. But yeah, I typically do. Well, I mean, before we went into self-quarantine or social distancing isolation, I think that last few weeks I was pretty slow. So three would be a slow day for me. 5 to 6 is pretty normal. 5 to 6 hours, and then 5 days a week. So I try to stay under 30 a week. 25, 26, 27 is really good.
For optimal hand butteriness.
For optimal hand butteriness, yeah. I mean, I got to play guitar and do typewriter work too. I can't just work.
You're an interesting man.
I love that like all three of the things you do are like highly like hand dependent.
Yeah.
I know. I do think about that sometimes. I'm like, well, I do want to keep working. I'm like, maybe I should quit playing guitar or quit and then I was like, no, I mean, that's just part of it. Yeah, so I'm not doing that.
Or you should start playing with your feet.
Yeah, that's true. I could do Thai massage to just do feet work. I should do that.
I think feet guitar is a better idea. Feet massage sounds weird.
Chef would like to know your opinion on kind of like passive massage techniques like the Theragun and other things like that, or the Hyper Ice. I think it's the vibrating foam roller, but stuff like that.
Well, there's been some really good research that shows that it's as beneficial as massage. I think what you don't get, and I would say this goes to, so if you're the kind of person that goes to like a Massage Envy or a spa place, or you go to a massage place where they have 12 people on staff and you just get, Sue can work on you today and you just take anybody. I think what you lose is you lose someone working on you continuously. So Chris, I've worked on you enough over the years that I can tell you when your shoulder feels better than normal or not, not as good. Mm-hmm. Or I can say, yeah, geez, what did you do to this? You don't usually feel like this. So what you lose with a foam roller, with kind of any of that passive stuff is that. But I mean, the research that I've seen last year, sort of out of Australia Institute of Sport, is super beneficial. Super beneficial, yeah. Or can be as beneficial as massage. If you don't believe massage is beneficial, then that stuff's not beneficial either. But
I just want to confirm one for Enid, also because we love her and now I'm a little bit worried. But when we were talking about the feel that a muscle has, she asks if a bubble wrap feel is bad. She assumes.
Bubble wrap feels bad.
Okay. Enid, go see your massage therapist, girl.
Or at least get on the foam roller.
There's like a whole group of people out there right now who's like
I mean, I'm the king of like, I'll be in my pack, I'll be doing this and my son is just like sitting across from me going, what are you doing? I'm working on my pack, man. I'm doing some active release stuff, man.
No, that one in particular that you taught me, that pec release, the like get
it's
oh my god, it's insane.
It's legit.
Yeah, but it works. Like
I know it does.
It's like really helps the shoulder.
It does. I mean, again, anytime I have somebody on the table and I'm putting them through some pain, I've had it done to me. I again, if we're working through your IT bands, I'm sorry, but I know it sucks, but it's got to be done. Foam rolling the IT band. I mean, it's terrible, but I do it too.
Well, Kurt, we are out of time for our hour of power. But thank you for coming and being the most interesting man in the world, for sure. So many things we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about Star Wars. We didn't really talk about music. Chef is saying in chat that we can't stop. We say no.
No, sad.
Yeah, for those of you out there that do live in the Pacific Northwest, make your way to Portland. And Kurt works out of Portland Athletic Center for Excellence, a place called PACE. It's very easy to find. It's a therapeutic associates location here in Portland, and go see him. You will not be sorry that you did. Kurt has worked on me for almost 10 years, I think. He is the person other than my wife that knows me as better than anyone in the world.
Careful what you say.
and that kind of thing is really valuable for not only like friendship, but also for like your athletic development and longevity in the sport. Kurt, thank you for all of the work that you've done on me over the years, and thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
Yeah, Kurt, it was great to see you.
Thank you.
We miss you, and it's good to get to talk to your face. I can't wait until you're back and working again, so that I can get my massage.
This has been fine, but I'm ready to work.
Yeah. I bet. Everybody out there, thank you so much for your support and your many boos at the end of this. That was
I know, seriously.
This is the most we've ever been booed for ending a stream. And Enid, thank you for your cheer.
Wow.
We will see you again tomorrow morning. Chris and I will be coaching endurance spin at 8 a.m. and we just got another boo. And then we'll be back again on Sunday morning with yoga with Amy VT. So highly recommend before your long run, get some dynamic movement in and set yourself up for a great day. Kurt, thank you again. And we will look forward to seeing you in person soon. Bye guys.
Bye.